Welcome to Harmonic Evolution, the podcast. I'm Joe Heller, your host, your guide, and I am honored to have Reverend Michael Shane. Reverend Shane is a physical medium and a spiritual teacher. Reverend Shane has spent his life connecting with the Ascended Masters of Shambala to bring forth their teachings and principles into the world, this three-dimensional world we live in. Reverend Shane offers healing, instruction, direct application, so individuals can strengthen and fully realize their connection to the spiritual world, their guides, and their masters, as well as work directly with the Ascended Masters and the Lady Masters of Shambhala if a student seeks the calling. So welcome, Michael. This is a real thrill to have you here because there's just so much I want to get into, and it's just like, wow. I mean, there's so few physical mediums on the planet. So why don't we start there? Because I'm sure people, and I've met James Van Prague and a few others. So can you talk about the difference between a physical medium and then just a traditional, I guess, medium, and then how you kind of came down this path?
Well, the differences between mediums, and the first thing I want to say, one isn't any better or any less than the other. All gifts given to us by God, and everybody has one. It's just a question or an issue of finding what it is. But there are differences. I mean, with everything, you like in a football team, you have your quarterback and you got your offense, um, but there's mental mediums like you mentioned, James Van Prague and John Edwards,
Uh-huh.
who are very, very talented individuals that speak to people's loved ones to give closure and information to those that are grieving. And they do that through hearing and seeing spirit.
Hmm.
That's what a mental mediumship is. In reality, it has nothing to do with the mind. See, but they call it mental mediumship. And more, you'd probably be better to call it spirit connection mediumship,
Hmm.
or sight mediumship. Then you have the trance mediums, which are those that go into trance, and a spirit will come into their body and utilize the physical body to communicate to people.
Is this
Um,
more like a seance, Michael? Or is it just
that one's a séance, yes,
okay?
but it's usually done in red light, where the idea of a transfiguration medium came from, because in a red light setting in a dark room, when the medium is inside the séance cabinet, not using a séance trumpet, and the spirit comes into the body, their body tends to kind of shift and change into a very close familiar appearance of the spirit that's taking over the body.
Wow.
And then you end up seeing all these different orbs and things floating around. Um, and it's a pretty exciting thing. The the other one is a handwriting medium. I'm sure your listeners and yourself have heard of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yes.
His wife was a handwriting medium, and what would happen is uh, an automatic handwriting medium would use the opposite hand to write from what they normally write with. So if you're right-handed, the spirit world would use the left hand. If you were left-handed, they would use the right, because then your control factor isn't as connected to the opposite side as it is the one that you normally use. So it's easier for spirit to use. Now, if you use both, then I guess they just flip a coin.
Well, and I'd actually heard that before in reading some of Dolores Cannon's stuff. Is that when, let's say, she can connect with a past life through her client, and that past life was left-handed, they would write in left hand, and it would be anything from a completely different language, such as even ancient languages like Sanskrit or cuneiform, Sumerian cuneiform. So it's fascinating the way that this can kind of come through the body.
Well, we are truly, all of us are connected, you see, especially the mother to their child. Some mothers, through what they call a symbiosis etheric cord,
Uh-huh.
um, their child could be on the other side of the world, and they're going through some sort of trauma, and the mother on the opposite side of the world can feel it. Uh,
Yes.
to give you an example, everyone knows who Gladys Presley was, Elvis Presley's mother.
Yes.
She always knew when he was on the road when something was wrong, and she would describe what she was feeling to him when he would call. And in one specific incident, their car caught on fire, and they had, and his mom saw the fire and all of that, and so she was really connected. The more connected that one person is depending on how sensitive you are and how emotional one it can be too.
Now, would that also apply to obviously twins, correct?
Same thing.
And then what if a twin, because you might have one twin that's a star seed, and then one twin that may just be incarnate as in this world for the multiple times, and maybe not a star seed. So I understand those maybe have a less of a connection, or does it really matter? Do you think?
I don't think it matters because they're hanging out in the same space for, you know,
Same mom.
yeah, and they're together pretty much their whole life, at least when they're at home anyway. Um, but the connection, because we're all connected, is still there. So I would think that it wouldn't matter. I
Okay.
don't know that for sure, but I would think that it wouldn't matter. I have known some twins uh, in my life, and I even know a set of twins that still wear the same clothes, and
Wow.
and they're my age now.
Wow. So they're 31-ish.
Yeah, thank you.
So anyway, I interrupted you. You were talking about the red light and apportioning, and so I know you were going to finish that story because then I really want to ask you your origin story, like all superheroes. I mean, because your talent, your ability, and I know all gifts are equal, but it's pretty amazing what you can do in this gift from the Ascended Masters that has, uh, I guess, opened some gates for people to see a greater understanding of the otherworldly realms through you.
Well, in regards to the Transfiguration red light seance, I pretty much told you about as much as I can there. I could probably talk about it for over an hour, but just that one element alone. But in my case, how I got involved was I really didn't have a choice. Um,
You were volunteered.
and my grandmother, she knew Marjorie Crandon.
I don't know who that is.
She was one of the old mediums, the one that passed the Houdini test.
Wow.
Um, and Houdini tried he got upset because she keep passing his tests, and so he tried to set her up as a fraud on his own, and got caught by the spirit that was coming through her. And so he still hasn't paid her the $10,000 reward to pass his tests. So
Well, I would imagine the interest on that now. She's probably a pretty good paycheck.
yeah, I would think so. That was what, 1920s.
Yeah, I think so.
So I would say $10,000 now could be worth close to 2 million, maybe.
Nice.
Maybe, I don't know. My math isn't very good. So anyway, that led her to meeting an individual in Seattle, Washington, um, who was studying this book called the Rancha book, and had these teachings of these masters from Shambhala. And this comes from the Theosophical Society. Helena Blavatsky, who
Yes.
created the Theosophical Society, she was the first medium, physical phenomena medium, to introduce the Ascended Masters to the physical world. There's a picture of her sitting in a chair with three of those masters standing behind her. That was Saint Germain, Kutumi, and El Moria.
And if I'm correct, Michael, isn't she the first woman that was ever trained by Tibetan masters?
That's correct. That is correct. Um, you know, as James Brown says in one of his songs, it's a man's world. In those days, it kind of was,
Right.
though today it's not. I'm not sure whose world this is right now.
Well, like on Back to the Future, I think the professor would tell Marty, whatever you do, Marty, don't go to 2020.
Yeah, yeah. And look what happened.
Well, and
But
to your point, though, I mean, Michael, I didn't mean you're up, but yeah, back in those days, you had what Helena Blavatsky and then Alice Bailey. I mean, two women that really kind of shaped spirituality, the world we live in today.
yes, and in fact, Marjorie Crandon, who I mentioned earlier, she was instrumental in how women got the right to vote.
Wow.
'Cause she was married to a upper class surgeon doctor. I believe it was in Philadelphia, um, somewhere in that arena. And she had these gifts, and her husband thought it was kind of neat. So he would have some of his elite, rich, upper class people come over to his house, and she would do events and stuff. And every once in a while, she'd go out and do stuff publicly, and when he was working, because if you're a surgeon, you're not home that often,
Right.
and that was even the case in those days. And she, in a séance, a spirit by the name of, I believe his name was Dr. Black,
Hmm.
or no, that was Edgar Casey's. The Sleeping Prophet, he got his information from a spirit called Dr. Black. You don't read much about that anymore, for some reason, but uh, that was the case. But she had a spirit that came through and told all of these upper class women in society, to go down to the White House in their designer outfits and picket for the right to vote. Well, they took it one step further than that. They did get into their designer outfits. They went down to the White House with their signs and everything, but they chained themselves to the White House fence.
Wow. Wow,
Um,
that's crazy.
you can actually read about that happening. Not the part about the seance. You have to go into another area to find that information. But that was one of the instrumental reasons why women got the right to vote,
That's
um,
awesome.
which they should have been given the right to vote, you know, after the scenario with Jesus, because he was teaching equality, that women were just as important as equal as men were. You
That's
know,
correct. And a lot of people don't realize how many women followers Jesus had. Mary Magdalene was actually, as my understanding, a high priestess from Egypt, which is one of the reasons that they commune so well together, is because they were very aligned with their teachings.
and eventually became his wife.
Yes, I wasn't going to go down that path, but yes, tantric sex and a whole type of, which could be a whole different podcast for us, Michael.
Well, just to kind of give a little thing, um, I've been writing a book about his life, including the missing years. Uh, his spirit has come to me and told me all these different stories
That's awesome.
about his life, and um, I'm not sure if everything that he has told me I'm going to write it in there, because I'm worrying about the controversy that may arise because of some of the information. But but yes, it was Mary Magdalene's parents are from Egypt. She was actually born in Israel.
I did not know that, but that's interesting. And but to your point, I would think that with everything breaking loose in 2020, this is the Great Awakening. I would
It,
say include it because I mean, there's been so much controversy around Jesus's, as you were just talking about, missing years, and Obviously, those of us that are kind of following that path know that he was in India and received certain teachings and other places that he had traveled to, which are not in the doctrine, probably in the archives in the Vatican.
Like his master teacher, Maitreya, who he
Yes.
met in India. You know, wonderful master teacher he is. So anyway, to my story is a long story, so I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna give you the short of it,
Please.
if I know how to do that. Uh, when my mother was 15 years old, she went to this church um, called the Aquarian Foundation
Hmm.
in Seattle, Washington, not too far from where they just recently had all the riots and stuff.
Interesting.
And she was 15 years old, and she was told by a spirit in a seance through a medium by the name of Reverend Keith Milton Reinhardt that she was going to have a baby boy that was going to be born July 4th, 1963 at 11:59 a.m. and that I would have these gifts. This boy would have the similar gifts as the medium. That I would
Wow.
be trained by this medium, and that she wasn't to raise me, that the church would raise me as an avatar.
Nice.
Now, I do have a little bit of an ego, but not to the point where I think I'm some sort of avatar or godchild like they treated me in those days.
We could put like a big blue stripe on you right here, Michael. I think that's what.
Yeah. Um, I, uh, no, I'm not going there. So,
Well, we know what your next Halloween costume is going to be. I think his name was Ang. I think Ang, something. Anyway.
every once in a while, I come out wearing robes and stuff, but that's for another purpose, not to be egotistically inclined there. So I ended up being born on July 2nd, 1963 at 11:59 a.m.
Wow.
Everything was correct except for the day. They missed the day by 2 days. But I've always been told that was because I was in a hurry to get
Overachiever.
out. So I was born on a Tuesday, and um, I was in my very first seance that following Sunday. And
Wow.
I didn't make a sound through the whole seance.
Wow. That's an
And
interesting baptism.
yeah, and because there's a higher consciousness that's getting training.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I might have been in that little body, and stuff, but there's another part of us that exists called the heart consciousness mind, or
Yes.
no, the heart mind consciousness. And
Especially at that age, because you're wide open. You just came in, right? I mean, it's
right,
just you are wide open, and most of us are until like 6 years old.
right, and it was I remember my birth, and I remember those days, even to details of what people were wearing, and I told my grandparents what my grandfather was wearing when he came to see me through the glass at the hospital. Remember those days you used to go stand behind the glass. There's my son, that kind of thing.
Yeah, with a cigarette, right? This,
Yeah,
this is my son in the hospital.
right. Um, and and um, uh, oh, I lost my thought there.
So you had just been in your seance. You were able to tell everybody what they were wearing, what they were doing, kind of like an out of body experience when you do like a transition from this world, and you get pulled back. You get to see everybody in the hospital room in the surgery.
Well,
This
it was a chaotic day because I died 3 times, and my mom died twice
wow,
while I was trying to be born. And I believe I was saying, you know what? I don't want to deal with this. I'm out of here.
interesting. Your soul
You
was
know?
like, no, thank you.
But so, because of in those days, religion was a big stickler in the hospitals. So the doctor went out and told my grandparents, which one do you want us to save? Because some religions save the mother, other
Right.
religions save the child, right? My my grandfather, and I was told this because I wasn't out there to see it, but he grabs the doctor by his white coat, brings him in like this, tells him, "You saved both of them, or you better not show your face out here again." and he ended up saving both of myself and my mom.
I love that story.
You know, and then my grandmother was the lady that helped Reinhardt do the books. She set up the event. She ran the church for him, and all he had to do was come in and do his thing. Um, and I ended up living with her and a few other people in the church. I was kind of passed around like a hot potato there for a while, and those were what I call my happy years.
So, do you think you were just kind of indoctrinated in this higher energy, and you were playing kind of like the old Frank Sinatra song, "Playing in the Stars" or "Among the Stars"? So, and it just kind of like permeated within your physical avatar, your body.
Well, to be honest, I milked it for everything I could then. You know, these old ladies would come up to me on a Sunday and say, they, um, they would call me Little Keithy, uh, because I was named after my biological birth name is Keith Milton Lester,
Okay.
and I was named after him. And they would ask me if I had breakfast. I said, no, I'm hungry, you know. And they would take me over to the Safeway where they had this deli to buy me some breakfast, but really all I wanted was a milkshake, you know.
That's what
And
all kids want, right?
yeah, and my grandma would say, "Don't do that," you know. I got a lot of good memories from those days, and I was treated very special and spoilt. People would give me money, candy. Um, Birthdays and Christmases were just undescribable.
Wow, payment in advance. I like that.
Yeah, and people would. I mean, I'm 4 or 5 years old, and people would want me to come up and do healings on them. Uh,
Well,
it
I
was
was going to ask you
amazing.
about that. So, obviously, we talked briefly about the apportion. I want to jump back into that in a second. But I also believe, through some of the material I read, that you do hands on healing and remote distance healing. Is that correct?
Correct. Now, when I was about 6 years old, Saint Germain whispered in my ear, "Now you do know you're not healing these people." And I thought about that. I said, "What do you mean? You are uh, a avenue, a vehicle, a tool. Think of yourself as a hammer. The hammer does not build the house until someone comes along and picks it up." And I think what he was doing was trying to help me not to lose my egotistical negative side. You
Right.
know, get into that "I healed you" when truthfully you're being used as a vehicle to help people believe in themselves enough to heal themselves.
Right, but that's also something you were chosen for. I mean, not all of us are chosen for something like that, especially at 6 years old. That's pretty amazing.
It was, and it's just I think it's wonderful and amazing, but I also feel that everybody has the ability to heal themselves,
I agree.
because they're the ones that created the issue in the first place.
Yep.
If you're the one that writes the map to the treasure, right, then you should probably be able to find the treasure.
Exactly. Yeah, we just become disharmonious. We don't
Right.
really know how to get back in sync, and so I kind of see us as a, if you will, a cymatic wave pattern that, like Dr. Emoto's work, when you have this corrupt or just negative or disharmonious thinking, the whole wave becomes disharmonious, which causes corruption, aging, disease within the avatar of the body.
Right. And disease will eventually come into disease.
Right, exactly. So
You
let's
know.
jump back to porting because I find that fascinating, and I want my listeners to really kind of get their head wrapped around it. And through the videos, I was like, wow, this is like so crazy cool. Because I'm watching you apport, and apporting really is kind of, I guess, opening a spiritual gate through different parts of your body. And what's the physical mediumship is you're actually bringing through gold, jewels, I mean, a number of different things, including, I think in one we were talking before the show, a 1300 carat, was it sapphire?
Blue sapphire, yeah.
Blue sapphire. And then one of the other really fun ones for me was when you were talking about holding a class, and there was a puppy in a car, and the puppy was like going crazy, and you apported brought the puppy in, or St. Germain brought the puppy in, and it jumped out of your belly and onto the lap of the owner, and it was in your class. I mean, I was like, had to wrap my head around apporting living like puppies. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Whoever needs to go shopping again.
Well, I remember that day. That was in Renton, Washington, and we were doing a seance, and there was my helper. Her name was Pat. She had this dog named Chipper, and my car was parked just outside of the window next to the seance room.
Uh huh.
So this little dog's out there, yip 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 yip, and people were getting cranky because they couldn't hear what Spirit was saying. And one guy says, he makes a comment about getting a refund because, and the next thing you know, and I'm in trance, so I didn't know this had happened. And so the dog comes through and jumps out into the audience in pitch dark conditions and is able to find the, her owner. And so jumped up in her lap and sat quietly for the rest of the seance. Now, that gentleman afterwards wanted my car keys. And I go, what do you want my car keys for? And he says, I want to go look in your car and see if there's a recording device with a dog barking. and, and so he goes out and he looks. He doesn't find anything. And
Oh, he was serious. Okay, I thought he was like joshing.
No, and he was in a suit, with a tie and a suit coat and everything. So he says, can I go under the house? Because there was this section where you can crawl under.
And right, the old house is right on the pier and beam.
Yeah, this house was built in the 1920s, right? And he goes under there. He takes his coat off, but he goes under there with his tie, his shoes, his slacks, and nice shirt and all that, in his suit. He's under there for 45 minutes. Now, what he's looking for is a trap door.
Right.
Right? And he doesn't find anything, and he notices no one's been under there because of where the cobwebs were, and they were undisturbed. When he ruined his outfit. I mean, when he came, because it rained the day before. But he just couldn't wrap his mind around it, and says, I just don't believe it. And so he never went public or anything to say anything negative. I never seen or heard from him again. But it's just hard for people to imagine now.
Well, Michael, to that point, real quick. I mean, even for me, because I was like, okay, I can see apporting or bringing through the spiritual realm non-living materials like jewels and gold. But when I watched that video, I was like, really? Living materials can be apported through a body? That's like crazy. And it's like, could give a whole new meaning to the virgin birth, if you will, because it's just something that was kind of beyond my comprehension. I got my head wrapped around it now, but it was like, wow, that's, and I would imagine even as a physical medium, there's probably very few physical mediums that can apport living material through their body.
I have not heard of any, not even Keith Reinhardt, but that doesn't really, it doesn't take anything away from anything that any of them do.
Sure.
But you got to think in terms of quantum physics. In reality, there is no distance between point A and point B. Okay? The closest distance between 2 points is not a straight line. It's where you take the 2 points and put them in the same space and time. So you're folding space and time, which is where the reality of existence really is, because the past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Like, for instance, right now, you're still going through your childhood, and you're also going through your future, and you're going through the now. It's just this element of your consciousness is here. There's another element of your consciousness that's is in the tomorrow, and another one that's in the past. You see, yesterday.
Well, that's
And
brilliant. As a matter of fact, right before we jumped on this call, I did a video for my YouTube channel, and I talked about past lives and future lives, and then I threw some monkey wrenches in there around. They don't need to be linear, so you can actually go back and have a past life that wasn't there from a current life because you've developed something in this life that now needs to be developed in the past life. You actually have it in this lifetime. So looking at the observer being the observer, observed who's being the observer. So it's really kind of a house of mirrors, if you will, which is interesting because I understand exactly what you're saying in that perspective. It's fascinating that you're right. It's the points are together. There is no separation. It's almost like being on a computer hard drive. People, like run and play these games and climb mountains and swim through rivers and row boats, but that one piece of code never moves from that one spot on that hard drive. And yet they're all over the world, but that one piece of code, or in the game, and that one piece of code never moves.
right, and it's kind of like an illusion.
Right.
And we are sitting in the illusion. Everything that you see around us isn't the way that it truly is. And I have come to realize that the physical world and the spirit world um, are one and the same. That's why our loved ones and spirits and stuff are still there with us. That we sometimes see them because we're in the same space as they are, but because of the conscious mind and the experience that we're going through relative to this side of the veil, we see this.
Right.
You see, um, I was working with a scientist. His name was Edward Wilson. Lived in Boulder, Colorado, up in the mountains. He was the very first scientist to test me at the HeartMath Institute in California.
Oh yeah, great place. Yes.
Yes, I met Dr. Childers. He was a riot. That guy.
Yeah, Raleigh is his first name, I think.
Huh?
Raleigh, I think, is his first name.
Yes.
Raleigh. Yes.
And wonderful man. I don't know if he's still alive or not, because this was back in the '90s. But who knows? He could still be around. But anyway, he was studying the healing effects of sound at
Yes.
the time. Heart math. So in one of the scenarios, I was in trance describing the crucifixion of Jesus,
Wow.
because I was astral projecting my consciousness back to to that time, and the machine that they had me hooked up to stated that I believed what I was seeing. It wasn't saying that I was really seeing what I was describing, but it was basically saying that I believed it, meaning I wasn't making it up. I was seeing it in my mind and believed it was there, even down to the emotional level of the experience. And I got to say, the Mel Gibson movie has nothing on what really happened to the poor guy.
Wow.
You know, we did a séance. I believe it was in Lilydale, New York, and his finger. We were doing a paraffin wax fingerprint where he materialized his hand and he put his hand down in the wax, and the finger was broken. And um, and I was told that was because when he was being tortured, one of his fingers, was broke.
Right. When he was on the cross, he was tortured. Or are you talking about when he was actually
Well,
carrying the cross through the city?
when he was when they were trying to nail him on his wrists, the hammer went and hit the finger, and it broke his finger and twisted it back.
Wow.
And so it showed that on the handprint. But with Ed Wilson, I then did it's a past life regression. This gentleman that was working with me at the time, his name was Reverend Weston Bailey, who recently passed away a couple years ago. He basically is the guy that brought me out of lethargy. I was going down a deeper rabbit hole in those days.
I understand.
Saved my life. But anyway, I would astral project myself out of my body in through the throat chakra of the individual, and I'd be able to go in and see past lives, medical issues, childhood stuff, present day stuff. I'd see all this stuff by etheric cords. And I described, I'm looking at his blood, and I'm describing something that I thought was kind of peculiar. I said, I see these jelly bean looking things being devoured by these round plate looking things. And Mr. Wilson stood up in the chair. He turned absolutely white and said, I don't believe this. I just don't believe this. What had happened was I had described his leukemia. Now, nobody that was there in the room other than him knew he had leukemia.
Wow.
And if you looked at it underneath a microscope, that's what it looks like. And only people that knew that he had leukemia was him, his doctor, and his wife. His wife wasn't there, and I didn't know his doctor, and so there was no way that I could have known that he had leukemia. So that led me to a place called the Heart Math Institute, or I'm sorry, the Subtle Energy and Energy Medicine Organization, which used to be out of Boulder, Colorado. And another group, a gentleman by the name of Jerry Pittman, PhD. He also passed away a number of years ago, and he did some studies on me too. And then recently, another gentleman out of Heidelberg, Germany, Eckhart Kruse. He did some thermal imaging, infrared. He was actually there present with his equipment when I did the 1,300 carat sapphire.
Wow, that's
that
amazing.
was under scientific conditions.
Wow.
And then he did a voice analysis where he was testing my voice along with the other voices that were coming through the seance, and all 5 of them came from different voice signatures, which is not even Rich Little could have created that.
Well, I would say that most of my listeners probably don't know who Rich Little is, but if you get a chance, Google Rich Little and look up some of his YouTube videos, because he's a classic comedian that had all these crazy voices. He was just a brilliant guy. So
he did a really good Nixon.
He did, exactly. Yes, and of course some of our listeners probably don't know who Richard Nixon is. I am not a crook.
I am not a crook.
Well, Michael, we have something in common, because I was actually born in '63 as well. So we are kindred spirits from back in the day of, unfortunately, the JFK assassination. So a couple questions is, so the 1,300 carat, and I know that you go through incredible prep relative to making sure that in these scientific conditions, you're put in a box, your mouth is taped, you're kind of handcuffed to a chair. So there's really no way you can fake these jewels and gold and jewelry coming through. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, you're searched and all this sort of stuff. You're never left alone. So when you apport these items, let's say, you mentioned a trance. Is there like a gate that opens? Can you see the apportioned, let's say the jewel or the ring or whatever it might be? Can you see it in your mind's eye before it comes out, or does it just come out, and it's just and it's, I guess, everything's selected by the Ascended Masters.
Mostly Saint Germain. I'm just as surprised as everybody else. It's
Really?
because I'm not completely 100% in my body in the first place. Okay, and I don't know what's coming through, and even when they're coming out, uh, because there's a process. And let me briefly give you a
Yeah,
quick.
please. I was going to ask you about how to get into that trance state and what the real process is.
Well, once I'm in the cabinet, and yes, I do this spontaneous where I'm not in the cabinet like I did with Wayne Dyer. I did it just right in front of him before I even went into the cabinet. The first part of it, anyway. And so Saint Germain will have located objects that he's going to bring through that they have been programmed and energized for specific people from their guides and master teachers. And he then puts it on this makeshift table in Shambala. It has kind of a bowl in it. It's a
Okay,
table
a concave. Okay.
with concave, so it does, stuff don't roll out or whatever. Then his heart opens up, his heart chakra, and from that heart chakra, this silver energy will come out of his heart chakra into the conclave of the table where the objects are, and then the objects, including the table, lose their physical appearance and turn into their natural appearance, or which is energy and motion.
Oh, okay. So this is the a table, concave table on Saint Germain's in Shambhala in the etheric realm, and so he's
Yes.
doing that there, and it just turns into energy, and then just apports where you are in the physical.
Well, then he lifts the energy up with the will of the silver energy, and then this vortex opens up, which looks like Mercury that's moving in a counterclockwise motion.
Mercury the planet or Mercury the element?
The element, the liquid, or well, it's not really a liquid, but it looks like a liquid.
Right,
The
which is
stuff.
interesting because a lot of free energy in ancient times has been tied to Mercury. And Sir Isaac Newton, most people obviously know him for the law of gravity, this and that,
Right.
but he was actually more of a proponent and studier of alchemy, and he actually died of mercury poisoning.
Yep. Yep. Um, Alchemy is a lost art, and that's what Saint Germain is doing in the process of the apportation. So once the energy of these objects goes into the vortex, immediately appears through my body somewhere, because space and time has been folded into the same space and time, which in reality is never separated. It's always been that way.
Right.
Okay. And so then when it hits this, what we call the third dimension, the air, the oxygen, the light, it'll turn into a gas, from the energy into a gas, and then into a fluid, which people will see that part.
Is
Is
that
what
the
it,
ectoplasm, Michael? Is that the ectoplasm?
well, it's a fluid. It goes through a fluid state. It goes
Okay.
from a gas, the objects
Okay.
goes from the energy to a gas to a fluid, and then it solidifies once it hits the light into the object that it was. And
Interesting.
if you touch them too soon, they can dissipate right away. You have to be careful. Um, and and so that's the process. And then I go back into the cabinet to kind of get myself together again. People are organizing them, and then I come out and I call people up, and they receive an object with a message from whoever gave it to them, and for healing, for knowledge, for the message, and also to get them to start thinking about what really is this world have to offer. So, and the first time I ever apported myself was I was 7 years old.
When you say
Um,
apported yourself, you mean you transitioned into a different dimension or time
Not me.
space?
The first time I apported an object.
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
Yeah. Um, I was playing on a dirt pile. out behind my house, and I was playing. I don't know, kids don't do this anymore, but I was playing with army men.
Oh, I did that. Yeah, we're good.
Well, you did, but I mean, the
Ah,
kids today, they're playing with their little handheld stuff, you know.
right,
Um, Even bicycles are becoming obsolete.
right.
So I started feeling this nauseousness in my stomach, and then this cloud of ectoplasm came out of my stomach about 3 feet in front of me, 3 feet above the ground, and this object drops into the dirt. And I pick it up and I look at it. I didn't know what it was, you know, what kind of gemstone it was. So I'm all excited. I knew what had happened. I ran up to my mom, and she looks at it, and immediately she thinks I stole it from someone she knew. So she calls this person up because we had spent the weekend at this person's house. She calls her up and says, "Can you go look in your, you know, your jewelry box?" And she looks. She says, "No, no, that my apport's still there from the medium Reinhardt." And so then my mom knew. Oh, well, this happened. Well, to this day, you know, that was when I was 7. I'm 57 now. 50 years ago, I haven't seen it. She keeps it.
Wow, that's awesome. What a great
It ended
story.
up being an 88 karat white sapphire.
So, two quick things. The ectoplasm. So, can you talk a little bit about what ectoplasm is? Because I think that's something that many of my listeners may not have a concept of. I mean, we remember the movie Ghostbusters where they talk about the ectoplasm. So, what is it from the Ascended Master's perspective?
Well, it would be best for people to go read Charles Roche's work, because he's the one that actually coined the word ectoplasm.
Hmm.
Okay, but relative to what I know, ectoplasm is really a life force energy that comes from your soul through your 7 bodies, past your silver cord into the physical body, down into your nervous system, which gives us energy to keep things moving, like your heart beating, being able to breathe, having the nerve fluid to move through the nervous system. And everybody has that. Only one out of every million child that's born produces enough ectoplasm to produce phenomena on its own.
Right.
And that's usually kids that have overactive adrenal glands. You know, the kid that won't sit still
Right.
no matter what you do.
So
And I was,
ectoplasm would be, in a sense, like ki or chi or vril. So an energy, life force that's used to create this,
well,
or
it's a chemical byproduct of the soul.
okay, interesting. I've never heard it
Um,
called that before.
that's my analogy.
Okay. And the second thing I just wanted to point out to my listeners is that all these incredible, and it's not just jewels, it's rings, it's all kinds of things that have like symbology. You give these to the people that are in a workshop. I mean, St. Germain, as you mentioned, brings these through with a message, and it's, I don't know, $100,000 or whatever it might be of jewels that you apport in a workshop. And then one of your attendees gets one of these because it's specifically been gifted to you to bring into this realm for them. Is that correct?
Yes, there's gemstones are mostly the objects that come through me, because most of the people that come to my events are women.
Ah,
You know, and women like those little sparkly gemstones. Um, every once in a while, silver dollars will come through. Some of them still encased in plastic that never been touched.
wow.
Um, Different origins of the world. I've had gold coins come through from a tenth of an ounce to a 1 ounce gold coin. There's a couple of times that I apported gold nuggets, um,
Wow.
and, and there's people who can actually tell you where the nugget came from. So these nuggets were actually came out of Alaska.
Right, because I know that gold has a specific radiation signature, which you can
Yeah.
track to whichever mine in the world it came from.
Now the funny part of this is some people think I'm regurgitating this stuff.
Right.
Now, especially when that Steven Starr guy on British Got Talent came out and started swallowing pool balls and things like that. But any gastrologist would tell you regurgitators don't swallow the objects. For one thing, that sapphire I brought through was 2.5 pounds. Not only was it bigger, a lot bigger than my esophagus would not have been able to push that up from my stomach, you know.
Right. Well,
Uh,
and to your point, before we jumped on and started recording, you actually said it broke a tooth, I believe, because it was so
shattered,
big.
shattered this tooth here and dislocated this jaw.
Wow. You would think that St. Germain would be like, okay, Michael, we're not going to like.
People have asked, well, why would Ascended Master put you through that kind of pain? Well, they don't. It's by my choice, for one thing. And I don't feel pain anymore during this process because now, through the years of doing this, um, it, my specific master teacher is Jesus, which is why I'm writing about him. It feels like he's holding my heart, you see,
Hmm.
and I don't feel the pain. Now, I do feel pressure, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. Now, I do feel the pain after, like for instance, when I was on the plane, my tooth was killing me,
Right.
and my jaw wasn't really all that happy for a while, you know. And but every single person that comes, every once in a while, it's not the case, but most of the time, everyone that comes will receive an object. Saint Germain will make sure, to the best of his abilities, that everyone receives something because if there's 100 people in the room and one person doesn't get an object, that person's not going to be happy,
Yes. I
you know.
understand. So,
And
so
and it's also one point I wanted
sure.
to finish. I honestly can't afford to give away all this stuff. So, me purchasing this stuff, I mean, people that are really close in my life right now are aware, that I'm not buying this stuff,
Right.
to give them away. Con men never give away their props in the first place.
Right.
But I'm no longer in the mode to try to prove myself or convince people. People are going to believe or not going to believe. It's what Saint Germain says. Where proof is needed, no proof will suffice. Where proof is not needed, no proof is necessary.
So, what is the craziest thing you've reported, Michael? Besides the puppy, we already talked about the puppy.
Well, it's two things, or actually three things. Um, about 3.5 years ago, I have a video of this, and I was going to post it, but I was warned, and then I thought better of it. So I've only given this video to a certain couple of people. Um, but in an event, with the help of Saint Germain, I apported a hamster out of my chest and a corn snake out of my mouth. The corn snake came first, then the teddy bear hamster came out, and he tried to escape. Now, can you imagine these women that were in the front row? What was happening with them when this little hamster was running across the carpet? And this was in lighted conditions, so everybody saw it happen, and you can see it happen in the video. Um, and we were told though prior about the snake. We weren't told about the hamster. And so we had that had happened. So that's one of the things that I would say. And then the other was a set of it was a wooden box, probably. Oh, well, it was a pretty good sized box, about maybe 8 inches tall, maybe 12 inches wide in both directions. It was handmade and hand carved. Inside the box was some red velvet, and you could tell that the material was old. And laying in the red velvet was two handmade solid silver goblets. And underneath where underneath the stem, where the thing that holds the goblets up, was Saint Germain's hallmark.
Wow, his heart.
Yeah, his hallmark.
Wow.
And he brought that through. The bummer is that night someone broke into my temple and stole it.
Unbelievable.
And I knew I kept telling myself I should turn around and go get it and take it home. But I wanted it to be in display so people could see it.
Right. Well,
You know,
obviously Saint Germain knew that. I mean, these people probably needed it more than you did. There were no coincidences, right? In the way everything unfolds.
now in regards to the message that comes through, if there's any more than 40 or 50 people, obviously not everybody gets an individual message.
Right.
If it's more than that, because I've had up to 503 people during an
Wow.
apport seance, and everybody got an apport, but everybody got the same message.
Oh, right. So would you say that would be like maybe a soul group that for some reason got entangled and came together?
Well, keep in mind past, present, and future, so the masters already know who's coming.
Right.
If you really sit down to think about all of this stuff, two things are going to happen. One is if you're having a glass of wine, you'll probably stop drinking. If you're not having a glass of wine, you might start drinking. If you really sit down to think about it, because I mean, even Einstein knew something about all of this, and that's where he left that unfinished formula, mc square equals 2.
Right.
That's an unfinished formula, and we still haven't been able to figure it out. But the answer to his formula, I believe, has a lot to do with a lot of what I'm doing. But it's not just me. There's other people doing it. There's other mediums that I've met, from physical mediums to mental mediums. I even met a medium that did mediumship with her toes.
How do you do mediumship with your toes? That's
I have no idea how she was doing it, but it was working. And then you have the one that's kind of playful, and that's the table tipping.
Oh, right. For sure. Yes. Yes. So jumping back to, I got one quick question and then kind of a wrap up question because I've had you on for about an hour and I could talk to you for 2 or 3 hours and hopefully we get a chance to do this again and dive deeper. I do want to mention before I ask this next question is you can find Mychael at mychaelshane.com and it's MychaelShane. So Mychael with a Y, and he's got his training courses up there. He's got a YouTube channel. So just really cool stuff. So if you want to go down this rabbit hole, I highly recommend you check Mychael out because, I'm fairly well versed in quantum physics. Mychael has actually blown my mind a little bit as well as I saw in the puppy thing that just, and now I think with the goblets and Saint Germain and the snake, I'm just like, wow, the snake. I'm just kind of wondering what kind of reaction the women in the room had with the snake.
They had more of a reaction with the hamster than they did the snake.
That's great.
Now, I have asked the masters not to do any more live objects through my physical body anymore because I actually ended up taking on the fear that the snake was having.
Oh, wow. Okay, I
And
can
it
see
made
that.
me sick for 2 weeks. So I I've asked the masters, no more of that. But and I do want to say, in October coming up, the end of September through the second week of November, I'm going to be in Detroit, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, Rochester, New York, and the Lilydale area, which is called Casadega, New York, um, to go on a road trip. And because, as we all know, U.S. citizens are not allowed to go to any other countries.
Right.
So I'm doing this road trip, where we will be following the COVID guidelines and all of that. For those out there that are wondering about that. So that's coming up. If anyone's in those areas that might want to check it out, they can get a hold of me, like you said, either at info@michaelshane.com or michael@michaelshane.com, and just go to my website, which is michaelshane.com.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Yeah, it's exciting. And you do so much more than what we just had a chance to talk about, getting into psychometry and other things. And I guess it depends on where and what people want to learn from you, from healing techniques to the mediumship to. Anyway, I'm just fascinated that you just have this collection of gifts. So let me kind of jump back and ask a question, because one of the things that struck me, because we talked about heart math and the heart chakra and the high heart, but you talked about going into the gentleman's throat chakra. Why the throat chakra? Were you that something divine guidance? Were you able to see the leukemia? I mean, I would think that you would.
The throat chakra is where the silver cord connects to the physical body, which is at the base of the skull. Okay. And the silver cord is what gives us physical life. Once that is severed, physical death occurs. But it takes up to, in earth language, 3 days, which goes to the issue of, Jesus rising in 3 days, or, there's a lot of things that happens in threes, the number three itself. But there's people that have been pronounced dead, and then 2 or 3 days later, they're waking up in the freezer. You've heard stories.
Right. It actually, back, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I know my mom's from a very old town from the 1700s in North Carolina, Beaufort, and they actually had bells that where you're buried, and you could pull a string and a bell would ring above ground in case they buried you while you were still alive, to your point.
Right. And people were really afeared of that, which is where the outcome of embalming comes in place. So you don't wake
You don't
up.
come back.
Right. And plus there was all kinds of stuff that people are afraid of death, but death is no different than being born. It's just being born into a different reality, leaving one room to go into the next room.
Right. Well,
The only thing about death that I worry about is I don't want it to hurt.
exactly. Well, there's that glass of wine again.
Yeah.
I do have one final question, because it just dawned on me, because as you're talking about the silver cord attaching to the back above the neck, which is really the ninth chakra, and that's what I've been taught, the mouth of God. I'm just wondering about your thoughts of the importance, and we may go down a rabbit hole, and you might want to say, well, Joe, we'll just table that. But I'm just curious about the importance of the pineal gland, because I personally, my guides have showed me the pineal gland is not all that important. It's really just kind of the whole concept. But I'm just curious how you look at the pineal gland, because there's such a heavy weight and burden that's put on. You've got to decalcify. You got to do this, got to do that. And one of the things my guides had showed me was, you just go up in the etheric. You have your etheric body. There's no calcification there, as an example.
Well, first thing I want to say is, if you go down that rabbit hole, my rabbits will talk to you.
Nice.
Okay, so the pineal and pituitary glands are not actually for the physical body. It is a tool that is brought in from the ethereal realm to be used as we start to develop, for instance, if you were to take a four-dimensional or three-dimensional picture of the inside of the brain beyond the physical mass part, where you
Yes.
see all the little synapses and stuff, in the middle there is a empty dark space which holds room for us to evolve. And the pineal and pituitary gland is there for that very reason. Plus, it also helps you connect to the gifts which come from the ethereal realm by nature to help you produce the sight to see certain things that are in the future, but you're not actually traveling into the future. The future is already right there.
Right.
Okay. So the argument is whether they were important or not. Relative to the physical part of it, probably not so much. But when it comes to the bigger picture, they're very important. It's kind of like the appendix. Uh, medicine doesn't really know its true purpose. But one of the things that I've been told is it is a cleansing area for ectoplasm as it goes to the kundalini, which helps us develop our creativity and the seances and the mediumship part of the ectoplasm as well. But if you end up losing that, it bypasses that organ and goes directly to the kundalini, and that could be a tough scenario because now you're getting the whole whack on your kundalini instead of it just being gradual and cleaned.
Right. Exactly. Like the old game Whack-a-Mole, right? Just for you.
Yeah, you know. So there's a lot to understand about the physical body, and I personally am not well versed in what that is. I'm a medium, not a doctor, or a scientist. I get certain information from my guides and master teachers, but if they gave me too much information, especially stuff that I couldn't possibly understand, uh, that would change the whole direction of where I'm supposed to go karmically. So, um, I'm not a brain person. I'm really good at history, but when it comes to math and things of that nature, I just best stay out of those conversations.
I agree. I'm playing with the abacus myself. So, with that, thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure. So, again, find Michael at Michael, Mychael, Shane, Shane.com. He's got these courses. Gosh, if you're in the upper part of the U.S., I think he mentioned Erie, Indiana, Rochester, New York, which is kind of like a foreign country.
Erie, Pennsylvania.
What's that?
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Oh, Erie, Pennsylvania. Okay, okay. So, and I guess all this is on your website. I don't have that pulled up
Not
in front of
yet.
me right now.
Not yet. But
Okay,
I haven't actually added anything to my website for a long time because I've been having problems with it and with the emails and stuff. And but I am planning on attempting to put these dates now that I've received them today um, on there so people can go to that. Or if they don't see it on my website, they can get a hold of me through the website as well, and then ask or befriend me on Messenger, and I would just they got to say who they are. Don't just leave
right.
their name, you know, um, and make sure they have a profile because if they don't have a profile, I don't approve it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly how I connected with you originally. Was on Facebook. So, thank you. It's been a mind expanding, conscious expanding experience just visiting with you. It just wow. I mean, what can I say is, and I would say that anybody that probably sits in your presence is going to have just this vibe of fluid energy that just kind of ignites their whole structure as you're reporting. So, what an experience! And I look forward to meeting you in person and hopefully get a chance to join one of these workshops in the near future.
I look forward to it. Just let me know where you're at when I'm there.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you, Michael.
You're